able to if you believe in yourself and you follow your gut and your instincts, you're able to live with the results. But if you listen to somebody and they steer you in the wrong direction and you lose out, that's very hard to live with.
From Ice Cube's cryptic messages to a series of leaked screenshots and late-night posts, the story around Charlie Kirk's final 48 hours has turned into one of the most talked-about online mysteries of the year. And trust me, you'll want to watch this video all the way through, because the twists just keep coming. It all began when Ice Cube decided to speak up. He wasn't giving interviews or starting fights. He simply said that there was more to the story than people realized. That single comment set off a storm. Within hours, social media exploded with hashtags, theories, and screenshots. Everyone wanted to know what he meant. Was he hinting at something hidden? Or was this another case of the internet connecting dots that didn't belong together? At the center of this whirlwind is Charlie Kirk, a name everyone in the political conversation knows. Whether you agreed with him or not, Charlie was a voice that shaped discussions and stirred emotions. He was known for his confidence, his drive, and his willingness to say what others wouldn't. So when news of his sudden death broke, it shocked his supporters and critics alike. People wanted answers. And that's when Candace Owens stepped forward. Candace, known for her bold takes and her refusal to back down, began asking questions almost immediately.
We saw after Charlie died with the lying, it was very weird to me. It was like they had to get out first and they had to lie repeatedly and obsessively and angrily, like Josh Hammer. He was neurotic and he was just Charlie, go to the furniture, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Charlie, it was totally crazy. It was something, what happened to him when he was a child? Why are you doing this? Why is there nothing that moves you spiritually to go, I'm not going to try to sell my book. That feels wrong. And also lying about Charlie's state of mind feels wrong. Something had to have happened to him when he was a kid. That's my genuine opinion. I don't know the facts, but is leading people into AI. I have always sensed this demonic because I'm telling you, I don't even think these people are human.
She said some of the official explanations didn't add up. She wasn't shouting conspiracy. She was simply asking why certain details didn't make sense. Her curiosity made people pay attention. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about one tragic event. It became about how information spreads, who controls it, and how truth can get lost between headlines. As the discussion grew, online communities began digging in. Reddit threads popped up overnight. Telegram groups started comparing notes. YouTubers, podcasters, and commentators, everyone was talking about it. They analyzed every message, every interview, every post. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, one screenshot appeared. It looked like a group chat between people connected to Charlie's professional circle. One name was blurred out, and that small detail was enough to drive the internet wild.
Where your larynx sits, right about here. And then almost immediately you see this flow of blood, and it's kind of a dark venous kind of blood. Which might give I don't have any records in front of me right now, might give an indication that this was a venous strike in addition to maybe an arterial strike. Arterial blood kind of pumps out this neuromuscular response that you see immediately with Charlie, where his posture changes, kind of grips, I think it's one hand, and he goes into this kind of contracted appearance, and then he falls over. That's, and I do believe this. I do believe that it was a catastrophic wound. I think that even if you had a team of cardiothoracic surgeons that were standing by, neurosurgeons augmented by various, if you had them standing physically there, he would not have survived this round.
So, who was the anonymous person? Enter Ice Cube again. On a late-night stream, he said something that reignited the fire. If you know who he is, you'll understand everything. That line alone sent people on a digital treasure hunt. Forums tried to decode it, others tried to match timestamps, and even some started scanning old interviews for clues. It wasn't just about gossip anymore. It became a collective investigation. But here's the part where things get fascinating. The story stopped being about what happened and started being about how we react to mystery. Viewers were no longer just watching, They were participating. They were detectives, theorists, skeptics, and storytellers all at once. Ice Cube, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, and others became characters in a larger conversation about power, media, and truth in the age of instant information. Some people believe that Ice Cube's comments were about transparency, about asking the tough questions no one else would. Others think it was all miscommunication that spiraled out of control. But whatever side you take, one thing is clear. The internet is no longer a spectator. It's the stage, the audience, and the director all at once. And in this new reality, rumors move faster than facts. Still, viewers couldn't look away. Each time someone thought they had the answer, another piece of the puzzle appeared. Old interviews resurfaced, video clips were reanalyzed frame by frame. Even body language experts weighed in, breaking down pauses, expressions, and tones.
Like 24 hours before he was killed, he had basically lost it and said, I'm leaving the pro-Israel cause. And this is before he's going to go on a nationwide campus tour where he's going to be bombarded with questions about Israel. This could have been potentially disastrous for the Israel lobby and the cause of Israel in the United States to have its most important non-governmental Gentile asset actually criticizing or entertaining criticism of Israel at these gigantic kind of arena-size event.
Okay, everyone, sit down, right? Well, now it's data that can piece together the whole story, what really happened before the incident. And what's chilling is that
you're able to...
Everyone had a theory, and everyone wanted to be the first to solve it. And that brings us to the real question. Why are people so drawn to stories like this? Maybe it's because deep down we all want to make sense of things that feel chaotic. Maybe it's because we've all felt that there's more happening behind the curtain than we're allowed to see. Whatever the reason, stories like this reveal something powerful about how we connect with one another, through curiosity, through empathy, and sometimes through fear. Candace Owens, for example, became a lightning rod for that curiosity. She wasn't just a commentator anymore, she was a symbol of persistence. Whether people believed her or not, they respected that she didn't back down. She kept showing up, kept talking, kept pushing for answers. And Ice Cube's involvement gave the story even a broader reach. He's not a politician, not a journalist. He's a cultural icon. When someone like him speaks, people listen. But what makes his role so interesting is that he didn't claim to know everything. He simply said there were questions worth asking. That approach, simple, open, and challenging, hit a nerve. People started thinking, maybe the point isn't to find a single answer, but to stay aware of how easily we accept the ones we're given. As the online investigation grew, journalists began covering the reaction rather than the event itself. News outlets reported on the rise of the Ice Cube theory, not because it was proven, but because it reflected how fast digital narratives can form. Within days, timelines, charts, and explainers flooded social media. Some tried to debunk, others tried to defend, but all of them kept the conversation alive. And then came the silence. Key figures deactivated accounts, statements were withdrawn, and official pages stopped updating. That silence only fueled more speculation. To the online world, silence isn't neutral, it's mysterious. And when mystery meets the internet, it multiplies. People began building entire storylines around what wasn't said. The absence of answers became the loudest sound in the room. The cast of this online drama, Ice Cube, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, and Josh Hammer, and countless digital detectives, turned into symbols of our new era of investigation. They represented curiosity, conflict, confusion, and courage. Everyone watching could see a bit of themselves in one of them. The truth seeker, the skeptic, the believer, or the analyzer. By the second week, creators across platforms were posting breakdowns. Some treated it as a political scandal. Others treated it like a modern-day whodunit. A few even recreated the timeline with dramatic reenactments. What started as a tragedy evolved into an internet-wide storytelling experiment. It showed just how powerful narrative can be, especially when millions of people tell it together. As viewers kept watching, more people began asking a deeper question. What happens when online mysteries become bigger than the truth itself? When the audience's imagination fills in the gaps faster than facts can? It's the digital age's double-edged sword. Information spreads like wildfire, but so does speculation. And once people believe they've seen a pattern, it's almost impossible to unsee it. Still, in all that chaos, there was one positive thing. The story made people think critically. It reminded everyone to verify before sharing, to listen before assuming, and to understand that not every puzzle has a villain. Sometimes mysteries go unsolved, not because someone's hiding the truth, but because reality is far more complex than it seems. And that's the message that Ice Cube seemed to leave hanging in the air. When he said, "If you know who he is, you'll understand why this is happening," maybe he wasn't talking about one person. Maybe he was talking about all of us, the people behind the screens, scrolling, sharing, decoding, and demanding answers. Candace Owens continued to speak, focusing on transparency and responsibility. She said she just wanted the public to stay informed. That focus kept her audience loyal, even as critics tried to dismiss her. Whether you agree with her or not, her persistence became part of the story, a reminder that passion and purpose can sometimes blur the line between fact and faith. Meanwhile, new voices joined the conversation. Journalists like Max Blumenthal added context, emphasizing that we live in a time where narratives can be weaponized. He encouraged people to look at the system, not just the individuals. And that shifted the discussion again, from who did what to why do we believe what we do. By now, everyone watching this video is probably asking the same thing. Where does the truth lie? The honest answer is, we may never know every detail. But the journey, the search for understanding, is what keeps people coming back. That's the real story, not the mystery itself, but the movement it creates. As the weeks passed, something beautiful happened. Instead of fighting, many online communities began collaborating. People from different sides of the debate started talking, comparing facts, and learning how to disagree respectfully. The very mystery that divided them started to unite them. It became a shared experience, a reminder that curiosity can be powerful when it's guided by integrity. And that's why this story matters. It's not just about one person or one event. It's about how we, as a society, handle information, uncertainty, and truth. It's about how a tweet from Ice Cube can start a global conversation, how Candace Owens can question a narrative, how Charlie Kirk's name can become a symbol, and how millions of strangers can come together to search for meaning. So if you've made it this far, and I know you have, keep watching till the end, because this isn't where the story stops. Every time someone shares a new theory, every time a creator uploads a new analysis, every time a viewer like you asks, "But what if?" the story evolves. It's alive, and you're a part of it. The next time you see a viral mystery like this, remember what you've learned here. Question, but don't accuse. Think, but don't assume. Listen, but don't let noise drown out reason. Because somewhere between the chaos and the truth lies understanding. And that's where real awareness begins. But even after all of that, the story didn't fade. In fact, it grew louder. As more people began to connect the dots, new voices entered the picture. People who had worked near these figures, journalists who had once attended their events, and even anonymous sources who claimed to have seen the tension building long before it reached the public eye. Each new revelation added another layer of intrigue, and the audience could feel it, that something big was still hiding underneath the surface. That's the thing about stories like this. They take on a life of their own. At first, it's about one person's claim, one screenshot, one tweet. But soon, it becomes a mirror reflecting our own hunger for truth. We want to believe there's meaning behind every coincidence, that every silence hides a message, that every unanswered question points to something bigger. And that hunger keeps us watching, keeps us scrolling, keeps us talking. By the third week, even mainstream news networks have begun cautiously addressing what was happening online. They didn't confirm or deny anything. They simply reported on the sheer scale of the conversation. Think about it. Millions of people across the world spending hours analyzing screenshots, replaying audio clips, studying timestamps, all to understand a single question. What really happened in those last 48 hours? And right at the center of it all stood Ice Cube. His tone remained calm, almost hauntingly so. He wasn't making accusations, he was making observations. "Things don't always happen by accident," he said in one of his live sessions, his voice steady but heavy. That single sentence echoed across every platform. It was replayed, remixed, and debated endlessly. Some said it was profound, others said it was reckless, but everyone agreed it was powerful. Meanwhile, Candace Owens continued her search for clarity. On her podcast, she talked about patterns, not just in this case, but in how society reacts to certain stories. She spoke about pressure, influence, and the courage it takes to stand alone when everyone wants you silent. Her fans saw her as brave. Her critics called her controversial, but either way, she was impossible to ignore. Every word she spoke added fuel to the mystery. And through it all, one question kept coming up. Why now? Why were these conversations happening at this particular moment? Was it just timing? Or was the public finally ready to question the systems they once trusted without hesitation? Even more interesting was how the public's role had changed. In older times, stories like this would have been buried or forgotten. But now, with social media, every viewer could become part of the investigation. The audience wasn't just watching history unfold, they were writing it in real time. Hashtags became headlines, comments turned into clues, and the search for the truth turned into a collective experience, something people from all over the world could share. Josh Hammer, one of the names mentioned throughout this saga, became a figure of fascination. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. His silence became symbolic, a reminder of how much power there is in saying nothing. Some people defended him, saying the speculation had gone too far. Others believed his quietness spoke volumes. Either way, his absence added to the sense that something was unresolved. Then came a twist that no one saw coming. A digital leak, not a major one, but enough to reignite the story. A set of archived files from public forums appeared online, containing early drafts of speeches, email threads, and scheduling notes related to upcoming events. None of it proved anything sinister, but the timing raised eyebrows. How could such specific material suddenly surface just when the story was beginning to fade? Coincidence? Or another nudge from someone who wanted the world to keep watching? Ice Cube made a short post after that. Just one line. Truth doesn't hide forever. That single phrase sent shockwaves across every corner of the internet. Comment sections filled with theories. Some people said he was hinting that more evidence was coming. Others thought it was a warning. But maybe, just maybe, it was something deeper. A call for everyone to stay alert in a world where stories shift faster than we can verify them. And that's where the story takes on a bigger meaning. It's not just about the final 48 hours anymore. It's about how we live in a time where truth and fiction blur together in real time, where digital trails outlive people, and where influence spreads like wildfire. Think about how quickly this one story connected so many people, artists, commentators, journalists, everyday fans, all united by one question. It's proof that stories have power, not just to inform, but to transform. When people care enough to dig, to question, to listen, they form something bigger than news. They form awareness. That awareness is uncomfortable. It forces us to admit that sometimes we don't know as much as we think. It makes us realize that behind every trending topic are human beings, complex, emotional, and fragile. People like Charlie Kirk who lived a public life but carried private struggles. People like Candace Owens who fights for her beliefs no matter the backlash. And people like Ice Cube who refuse to stay silent when the world expects them to stay silent. As the online storm grew quieter, what remained was not the noise, but the echo. The echo of millions of people who learned to look deeper, to ask questions, to see past the headlines. And that's something powerful. Because the truth is, the internet never forgets. Every screenshot, every clip, every live comment, it's all part of a living archive of our times. Years from now, people will look back and see this moment not as a scandal, but as a turning point, a time when ordinary viewers became investigators, when information became currency, and when silence spoke louder than words. Even now, there are whispers that the story isn't over. Some say more footage exists, locked away in servers or private archives. Others believe new witnesses might eventually come forward. But whether those things happen or not, one thing is certain: the curiosity the story ignited isn't going away. Once people learn to question, they don't go back to accepting everything at face value. That's why this entire saga feels so much bigger than one man, one organization, or one message. It's about power. Who holds it, who challenges it, and who gets to define the truth. So as you're sitting there watching this video, maybe you're asking yourself, who do I believe? The truth is, maybe belief isn't the point. Maybe the goal is understanding. Learning how to listen, to analyze, to stay open. Because when we stop questioning, that's when stories stop evolving. And here's something to think about. Every great change in history started because someone dared to ask, what if there's more to this? Maybe Ice Cube, Candace Owens, and everyone caught in the storm were doing exactly that, asking the question others were afraid to ask. Now, as this mystery continues to ripple through timelines and talk shows, the world is watching closely. The characters, Charlie, Candace, Ice Cube, Josh, and the millions of digital detectives have all played their parts. But the final chapter isn't written yet. It's being written right now, by you, by me, by everyone who refuses to settle for easy answers. So stay curious, stay aware. Keep your eyes open, because every story, no matter how complicated, holds a lesson. And sometimes that lesson is bigger than the truth itself. Because maybe this isn't just a mystery about one man's final hours. Maybe it's a story about us, about how we search, how we doubt, and how, even in the age of chaos, we still crave the truth. And that's why you should stay till the very end. Because as the lights dim and the noise fades, what's left isn't confusion, but awakening.
Months passed. The headlines changed. New scandals replaced old ones. New conversations pushed the story out of the spotlight. But somehow, this one lingered. It lived in whispers, in late-night podcasts, in quiet comment threads that refused to die out. People still wanted answers, not because they expected a revelation, but because they'd grown attached to the search itself. The digital footprints left behind became modern artifacts. Screenshots turned into reminders of how quickly the world can shift in 24 hours. Every time a new controversy broke out, people compared it to this one. Remember when the internet united to find the truth, they'd say? Remember how everyone became an investigator for a week? And maybe that's the real impact of it all. Not the theories or the debates, but the awakening it caused. Candace Owens returned to her show months later with a different tone. Gone was the sharp edge of frustration. Instead, there was reflection. What we learned, she said softly, is that information is power, but power without responsibility can destroy. That line resonated far beyond her usual audience. It wasn't about taking sides anymore. It was about remembering how words shape worlds. Ice Cube, on the other hand, took a quieter route. He began speaking more about transparency, unity, and the importance of protecting your narrative before someone else defines it for you. His posts were shorter, but somehow deeper, the kind that made you stop scrolling for a moment and think. One of his captions simply read, "You can't cancel the truth," and beneath it, thousands of comments echoed, "We're listening." And Josh Hammer, who had largely remained silent, resurfaced too. Not with statements, but with projects that emphasize dialogue and accountability. For the first time in years, people on opposite ends of the spectrum were sitting down to talk, not to argue. That in itself felt like progress. And as for the audience, the millions who followed every twist, who felt every ounce of suspense, something inside them changed too. They started questioning not just this story, but all stories. They began reading beyond headlines, fact-checking before reposting, thinking before reacting. The storm had matured them. It's easy to forget that behind every viral moment, there are real people, living, breathing, feeling people whose words and decisions ripple through lives they'll never see. The story of those last 48 hours became a reminder of that. It wasn't about heroes or villains. It was about perception, power, and how fragile both can be in the digital age. In a world where attention is the new currency, silence can be more valuable than speech. That's what this saga revealed. Every pause, every unanswered message, every missing frame carried weight. And sometimes what isn't said becomes the loudest part of all. So when we look back on this entire event, from the initial shock to the global discussion, maybe we see it not as chaos, but as evolution. The internet didn't just consume the story, it learned from it. It showed us that truth is no longer something handed down by authority, it's something we chase together, piece by piece, clue by clue. Because that's the era we live in now. An era where ordinary people become archivists of reality. An era where the line between audience and journalist has blurred forever. An era where curiosity, not certainty, drives change. And maybe that's what Charlie Kirk's legacy ultimately became. Not the tragedy, not the theories, but the spark that made people look closer, think harder, and care more deeply about the world they live in. When the dust finally settled, the algorithms moved on. But in the quiet corners of the internet, where the most devoted watchers gathered, one question still floated through the air. Whispered, reposted, reshared. What really happened? Maybe we'll never know. Maybe the truth is scattered across too many screens, too many narratives, too many agendas. But that's okay. Because sometimes the purpose of a mystery isn't to solve it. It's to remember what it taught us along the way. So if you're watching this right now, take a moment. Think about how this story made you feel, how it made you question what's real, how it reminded you that truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, waiting for the world to slow down enough to notice. Because in the end, every story, no matter how tangled, carries a reflection of us, our fears, our hope, our faith that truth still matters. And maybe that's the real ending. Not a revelation, not a headline, just awareness, the kind that stays long after the noise fades. So keep watching, keep thinking, keep questioning, because the story isn't over. It never really is. Cue the outro, slow fade, black screen, heartbeat echo, soft voiceover. Truth doesn't hide forever. It's easy to forget that behind every viral moment, there are real people, living, breathing, feeling people whose words and decisions ripple through lives they'll never see. The story of those last 48 hours became a reminder of that. It wasn't about heroes or villains, it was about perception, power, and how fragile both can be in the digital age. In a world where attention is the new currency, silence can be more valuable than speech. That's what this saga revealed. Every pause, every unanswered message, every missing frame carried weight. And sometimes, what isn't said becomes the loudest part of all. So, when we look back on this entire event, from the initial shock to the global discussion, maybe we see it not as chaos, but as evolution. The internet didn't just consume the story, it learned from it. It showed us that truth is no longer something handed down by authority, it's something we chase together, piece by piece, clue by clue. Because that's the era we live in now. An era where ordinary people become archivists of reality. An era where the line between audience and journalist has blurred forever. An era where curiosity, not certainty, drives change. And maybe that's what Charlie Kirk's legacy ultimately became. Not the tragedy, not the theories, but the spark that made people look closer, think harder, and care more deeply about the world they live in. When the dust finally settled, the algorithms moved on. But in the quiet corners of the internet, where the most devoted watchers gathered, one question still floated through the air, whispered, reposted, reshared. What really happened? Maybe we'll never know. Maybe the truth is scattered across too many screens, too many narratives, too many agendas. But that's okay. Because sometimes the purpose of a mystery isn't to solve it, it's to remember what it taught us along the way. So, if you're watching this right now, take a moment. Think about how this story made you feel, how it made you question what's real, how it reminded you that truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, waiting for the world to slow down enough to notice. Because in the end, every story, no matter how tangled, carries a reflection of us, our fears, our hope, our faith that truth still matters. And maybe that's the real ending. Not a revelation, not a headline, just awareness. The kind that stays long after the noise fades. So keep watching, keep thinking, keep questioning, because the story isn't over. It never really is. Cue the outro. Slow fade, black screen, heartbeat echo, soft voiceover. Truth doesn't hide forever. In the end, whether Ice Cube's comments were a warning, a metaphor, or just a spark that lit a wildfire, one thing's certain. They reminded the world how powerful words can be. They reminded us that the internet isn't just a space for entertainment, it's a space for discovery. And as long as people keep asking questions, stories like this will continue to shape how we see truth, power, and each other. So stay curious, stay kind, and remember, every mystery reveals a little more about the world and about us. And as for the story of Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Ice Cube, and everyone caught in the whirlwind, maybe the truth isn't hidden. Maybe it's right here, in the questions we're all still asking.